So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, based on the time zones you all are coming from. So before we start with the session, can you all please give me a quick information if you all can see my screen and hear me loud and clear as well? Great, thank you for confirmation, everyone. So before we get started, let me quickly introduce myself to you all first. So my name is Nltk, and I have been working in this IT industry for more than 13 years now. Let me quickly introduce our Edureka Masterclass community with you all. So this community of masterclasses was started back in 2019, and since then we have been closing into more than 33,000 members so far. And in these masterclasses, we conduct multiple webinars and live events on different topics, including blockchain, IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, and multiple front-end, back-end development technologies. And the best part about these webinars are they are absolutely free of cost, so there are no charges involved here. So to be a part of this group, we can simply click on this link here which says join this group, and then we will be notified with the entire schedule that has been planned for the month. Now we are going to discuss on how exactly we can perform the sentiment analysis using Python. So before we jump into that, we are going to have a quick discussion on what exactly is machine learning, why sentiment analysis, what exactly it is, and how exactly it works. And then we are going to see a small example for it. And then, if time allows, we are going to see a small hands-on as well. So Khushid, regarding the certification, support team is going to help you out in a better way. All right. So here we are going to discuss on, first of all, what exactly machine learning is. So machine learning, as we know, is simply allowing the system to understand the context and, or you can say, understand the data so that it can perform the actions more accurately. So machine learning is like a subset of artificial intelligence that allows us to train the system by using the data set that is required for the system to understand, okay, what exactly they are going to work on. That is what we had to find as a part of machine learning. And machine learning, as you know, it simply focuses on development of computer programs that can change when exposed to new data as well. So in terms of the types, we have three types. We have supervised, reinforcement, and then we have unsupervised. So supervised learning is same like training the system by using labeled data set. So here we are talking about the supervised learning method. So supervised is basically training the system by using the labeled dataset. A simple example is email sorting. When we are sorting the emails, we sort them by using multiple pointers, right? And then we have reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning is something that we do for training the system based on the feedback mechanism, where we are going to give them a positive, negative feedback based on the outcome that they have worked on. And then we have unsupervised learning. So unsupervised learning is training the system by using the unlabeled dataset. The best example here is the recommendation system that we see in YouTube and Netflix, where we don't use any kind of labeled dataset. We simply use the unsupervised learning method there. And then we have sentiment analysis as a subset of, or not exactly a subset, but again, it is like a method, or we can say analysis method that we have under supervised learning parameters. So why we have to use sentiment analysis? So basically sentiment analysis is required because let's suppose we have an application which is very famous and has around 1 billion users. So now we decide to add a new functionality to our application. So how will we get the feedback for it? So basically here we are going to ask the users to get the feedback. So comes in the sentiment analysis. So now we can focus on a negative post and improve our application as well, because the reviews are not all only available in the feedback form. They are available in post, in the blog section, what exactly people are talking about a specific brand here. And that exactly is what sentiment analysis is all about. So here, if you talk about sentiment analysis, then what exactly sentiment analysis is? So the process of computationally identifying and categorizing the opinions expressed in a piece of text, spatially in negative or again in order to determine the negative or neutral responses, that is what we refer as a part of sentiment analysis here. So how exactly it works? So basically now here we give scores to the positive word, and then we use the negative score for the negative words. So basically, for example, here we have positive sentences, neutral, and then we have negative sentences. So we give +1 for good, 0 for neutral, and -1 for bad words. For example, We have, this is a simple statement. So now we are going to divide this and give multiple scores in terms of positive or negative words. So for example, if we have, okay, suppose this is a good company, that means again, good is simply something accounted as a positive word, then that is going to be added as a positive score. Suppose again, this company is not good. So again, not good is something referred as a negative response. Again, that is going to be counted as a negative score. So basically, we pick multiple words and then we try to understand the sentiment in which they are structured in, and that's how we work on multiple sentiment analysis keyword. That's how it works. So here we can take a small example before we move on to the hands-on to understand better. So, for example, here we have a sentence, iPhone 7 is awesome. So here we have plus one. Why? Because good, awesome, great, happy, yes, interesting. These are what? Recipes of the positive words. Whereas bad, hate, sad, least, not, boring. So these are examples for negative keywords. So again, if a sentence is having positive words, then obviously that is going to be scored on a better side. And suppose here we have this movie is not that great. After all, it was boring. So here we have not as again, not again negative, great as positive, and again boring as negative. That means now we have a negative score that has been given. And let's take a complex statement example. The service was terrible, but the food was great. So now how will we solve this? So basically such case is called as constructive conjunction. So the way we solve it is like whenever there is but in the sentence, it reforms the sentence into the service was terrible and the food was great. So hence they calculate the scores separately. And this method is called as a binary sentiment analysis method. That's how it works. And then we have the sentiment analysis by using Python. So we are going to simply adjust the market strategy first, and then we calculate the error or the ROI. And then the ROI is defined for the campaigning strategy itself. And then we develop the product quality. We improvise the customer service for that as a continuous process, and that as a complete continuous process here. So now we are going to discuss on how we can make use of it as a part of a simple, plain, and simple sentiment analysis. Just a moment. So for that, in case you already have the Python ID, then we can go ahead and make use of the Python ID, or we can use any of the other IDs. Like for example, if we have any other ID, then we can make use of it. Let me just open up PyCharm Community Edition. In case you don't have the access to PyCharm, you can go ahead and download it from the JetBrains website. You'll be having the access. Hit update. All right, so here we are going to create a new file altogether. So here we can name it as sentiment.py. Now here, first of all, we are going to import a library. It's not open source, Lalit. PyCharm is not open source. It's offered in two different editions, community, and then we have the professional edition. So community is offered for free, whereas the professional is paid. It's not an open source tool. Clear now? So here we do need to install certain libraries so we can make use of it. We had to install NumPy. Then we also need to have pandas also installed. So here we are going to install pandas library as well. So pandas is already installed. So after pandas, we are going to install the regex here. And then it is already installed here. And then we are going to install the Nltk library here, the natural language toolkit. And then we are going to install matplotlib for generating graphs. And then, so these are the main libraries we need for performing the analysis. And that's why we have installed it. All right, so as you can see, these all libraries are currently available that we can make use of. So here we are going to start. Now here we are going to import NumPy as NP. Then we are going to import pandas as PD here. And then we are going to import the regex library. And then we are going to import the toolkit. And then the matplotlib. And from here, we are going to import pyplot as plot. And then we want the graphs to be generated in the same worksheet. So for that, we are going to define matplotlib as inline. That means whenever we are going to work on matplotlib, so all the libraries, all the graphs to be generated inline. So we can simply add it, or if we want to have it generated as a different graph, then we can keep it to different. We can simply remove it as well as and when required. So now, next is we are going to import the data set. So here we can define, suppose here as data source, and then we can define, suppose this one as HTTP. And now basically here we have the data available on GitHub itself. So basically this is a sample for Twitter US airline, which is available on Kaggle website as well. Then here we are going to save it as what? Suppose as airline tweets, and here we are going to make use of pandas library for reading the CSV file, and then here this is going to be data source, and then here we can define suppose airline tweets dot head. So basically once this has been fetched here, this is going to be displayed as a part of the head response here. So whatever is going to be fetched from this particular library, that is going to be displayed as a response. All right, so now let's move forward. Now, once we have the data, so again, we simply have to make sure data is available with us. And once we have it, then we are going to move forward. So basically, now here we are going to work on data analysis so that we can perform a bit of, we can say, EDA on that data here. So what we can do is we can define, suppose, something as plot size. And here we can use plot.rc parameters for the given figure dot fig size, and basically here we can make use of square bracket here instead of a normal one. Now next is, now if you want to print the plot size, so here we can define plot underscore size for initial value for 0, and then if you want, we can also print the plot size for the initial value of 1, and then we can define plot size for 0. So plot size for 0, we are going to define this as 8. Again, plot size for given as defined to be 6. And suppose here we can define plot dot rc parameters. Now again, suppose here just to have a quick understanding here, we can define suppose fig size. Then this is going to be defined as what? As a part of our plot size itself. And we can see the number of tweets for each airline as well. So for that, if we want to visualize that, we can go and define airline tweets. And for airline tweets, we can define suppose airline dot value, because that is the data that we have fetched. And then we can define this one as plot for the kind. Suppose we want to display a simple pie chart, and then we can define the auto to be defined for %1.0 as a part of a float percentage. So here we don't need to give double quotes here, we can give a single quote as well. And then we can also define the distribution as well. So if we want to add multiple other distribution components, then within this we can also define for colors. We can define colors, and suppose here we want to make use of different colors. So here under square bracket we can define suppose as red. Then we can define suppose we want to use a color as suppose yellow as well, and then we want to make use of green. So as a different color scheme count, we can also define it so that we can have a complete output defined. And we want to display the distribution of each individual airline that we have in the current data set. So here we can define airline underscore sentiment, and for this we can define airline tweets dot group by, and in here we can define, suppose here we want to group them by first of all the airline, and then we want to group them by the airline sentiment. So airline sentiment, and then we can define, suppose, airline sentiment dot count dot unstack. So this is what we can define. So basically here we are seeing the distribution of sentiment for each individual airline here. And then we can define airline underscore sentiment dot plot. And here we can define the bar as bar itself. So basically here, what we are doing here is we are simply trying to project the document as part of the requirement. We don't have to stay restrictive only to PyCharm. And if we have data available with us locally, so we can go in and simply replace the entire data source. And again, we can define the data is available with us locally itself. And that is the path that we can give here simply as tweet or CSV. In case we download data locally, then we can define tweet or CSV as a local path. If data is available in the same folder that we have our main data set. So we can go ahead and define the data set to be a local data available. We can define that. Now let me show you different ways of presenting the same data. And this is the current data set that we have got the access to. And we have the user time zone, then we have the specific. So these are tweet IDs. And again, this is a user time zone for which we have got the data set for. So let's say here we want to plot the number of tweets. So for that, what we can do, we can go ahead and define the color as well. So for that, we can define, suppose we can make use of Seaborn library for again analysis. If you want to make use of Seaborn, then we can define we want to import Seaborn as SNS. So if we are going to make use of Seaborn, then Seaborn also needs to be installed for the current project, that only we can make use of it. So here we can go ahead and search for Seaborn as a library. Seaborn is basically used for the statistical visualization part, just like we have Matplotlib, same way we have Seaborn. So we can go ahead and install Seaborn as well. And here we can use Seaborn's color palette. So here we can define this one as color palette. All right, so here we have a predefined color palette. So here we can define this the same parameter. Let's define this as color palette. And then we can define pd.series. Now basically here, from here we are going to create a series. And for that, we are going to define tweet, and the parameter would be airline. Parameter would be airline that we have defined here. Again, basically where exactly we are going to store data, that depends upon how we define it. So here we define this one as airline tweets. Let's do one thing. Let's shorten this up. So here we have tweets itself. So from the given tweets airline here we have tweets airline. And then we can define the value count. So for example, we want to count the number of airlines. So here we can define dot value counts. And here we can use plot. We can define what kind of plot we want to make use of. We want to define bar, the same thing that we discussed earlier. And then we can define the color that we want to make use of. So here we are going to define color, and for the figure size for, again, for the parameters as 86. And then we can define font size of the current graph that we are going to create. And then we can define the title of the graph here. So title can be, suppose, total number of tweets for airline. And here we can define plot dot text label would be for airlines, where the font size should be 10. And then we have plot dot y label as number of tweets, where we can define the font size for number of tweets to be 10 itself. So we can define however we want to present the current graph, and then this current graph is going to be plotted and displayed to us as a result from the airlines parameter that we are going to have from the given graph getting generated. That's how it's going to be. So as you can see here, this is the graph for total number of tweets for airline. This is the number of tweets done for United, for US Airways, for American, for Southwest, for Delta, for Virgin America. So this is again simple graph that we have generated from the current data set imported here. So we can define the entire graph size here, and then we can proceed with more analysis based on the positive, and we want to see the sentiment for different graphs. So what we can do, we can simply go ahead and create labels as neutral, positive, or negative. We can simply go ahead and define that. So for example, we can go ahead and no, basically here we define color for SNS, and then we can use the same A line, but again here we are going to make use of sentiment. So let's do one thing. Let's remove this graph here so we can define pd.series, and here we can define this a part of tweet, and then we can keep it for A-line sentiment. And for this, we are going to make use of value, the same value count, and we are going to present this as a part of pi. So we are going to define the kind as pi itself. And for the colors, we are going to make use of same colors tab, and we can define labels as, first of all, the first label is going to be negative, second one to be neutral, and the third one would be positive. Now here we can give the range here as 0.5, then we can define 0, then we can define 0.2, and then we can define 0.04, depending upon the labels. And then we are going to find the shadow for shadow to be true for the current graph being generated here. And here we can define this one as person.2cf, or let's say for 2f for now. And further we can define the font size as 12, the figure size as suppose 6 by 6, and then we can define title as total tweets for each sentiment, and then we can use plot.show. So basically here we are not dividing this for different airlines. We are simply going to look at a single pie chart showcasing different sentiment here. And then we define the type of plot here. Then we had defined colors. Then we had defined labels for negative, neutral, and then we defined for positive. And then we had defined explode based on the parameters 0.5, 0.2, and 0.4 for neutral, positive, and negative, where we define the font size, the figure size for the current shadow, and the title of the graph that you want to place here. So this is the entire breakdown. Thank you so much for joining, everyone, and have a great day ahead. Take care. Bye-bye.